Hello everyone, I'm here with Steve Dotto, and we're going to be teaching you how you should make evergreen content to be relevant for years to come.
It is a great idea. When you talk to YouTube content creators, how many of them are always chasing the most current trend?
So a lot of people see what larger YouTubers do, and what we want to do is we see something that we appreciate, we see something we respect, but what I find is that the YouTuber natural instinct is to say, I know I can make a video on that, but they haven't done the research or they don't understand why it's doing that well. So Steve, one thing you've done very well is you focus not so much on the latest trend, but finding something that a core audience that you want to target was. You called it what, the gray wave?
Yeah, for my audience, which is baby boomers and Gen Xers, the gray wave.
So how did you first discover that's the audience you wanted to hit, and then what kind of content did you create for them?
Okay, well, let's start with the content creation piece first, which was when I started my YouTube channel, I didn't really have what marketers would talk about as being a customer avatar. I didn't know who exactly I wanted to reach, and I always knew there was a hole in my business case, but I didn't have a solution for it because I couldn't decide who they were. So I concentrated on creating good content that ranked well in search and all of those other things. And what I did, though, that I think was smart was I always engaged in comments, making sure that I was listening to what they were saying and commenting back and making sure my audience was validated and getting feedback from my content. Because I come from a TV background, and content on TV, when I created television shows on technology, the content was determined by what sponsors wanted to spend money on, not what people wanted to see. So all of a sudden, being able to create content for what people wanted to see was an epiphany for me. It was very liberating, but I still hadn't really defined my audience. Through that conversation, they eventually led me to kind of discover who they were and who I was excited about communicating with. And in my case, all of the how-to content that I created, teaching people about technology, led me to understand, that there was a challenge that baby boomers and Gen Xers have in not just in technology but in business, is that we're increasingly kind of being marginalized. If you're a 55-year-old and you lose your job today, there's a really good chance you won't get a job back in that market. And every day in North America, 12,000 people reach the age of retirement. Wow. And only about 30% of those can afford it, and even less want to retire. And so what are their options if you're suddenly transitioning out? Can you imagine how after you've built your career in an industry and you're transitioned out, if you can't find employment in an industry that's a big part of you, that you've served so well for so long?
It feels like a part of you's missing almost.
I think it could be very serious. It could be devastating. And once I realized that, I thought, well, what's different about like me and my friends that are in social? And I realized it's the fact that we've gained some measure of independence because we're comfortable in social marketing. We're comfortable. But finding a successful YouTuber with a gray beard, that's pretty tough. So there's not a lot of role models for us. And so once I recognized that, I said, well, you must be one then, Steve. And now that kind of idea helped me really identify who my customer was and kind of what the mission was moving forward. So while I still will continue on the technology side, increasingly I'm going to be talking to baby boomers and Gen Xers about how the online space is not just the domain of the millennials, but it's that we actually have a right and a purpose in that space as well.
That's so important, especially, you talked a little bit earlier about building your career in a field and then having it possibly taken away. And whether it's old age and you don't feel like retirement, you still have so much value, and especially online where content can be for generations to come. I think there's so many angles, especially on YouTube. It's a search engine, the second largest in the world. So having a space where there's content that any age, any demographic can look up to people with years of experience is so crucial.
This is where what we started off the topic. I mean, off the top, we were talking about the difference between evergreen or the value of evergreen content versus the value of topical content in chasing that content. And, unless you're a really large channel with great resources, trying to stay ahead of trending topics, I think I just think about how much energy we have to put into crafting and creating each video that we create and posting it and all of that infrastructure in the posting, that if you're dealing with topical content, unless you're a news type or a channel that's dealing with guns. Yeah, unless it makes sense for your channel. But chasing the high impact of the initial launch of a video, I think you're going to see a lot of videos that have big uptake and then massive decay. Whereas people who create evergreen content know that not every video, but the videos that really make a good that really help support the pillars of their channel start, and then we see increasing views over time, and those are the channels that really grow, because that's evergreen content that's growing your brand every minute, every hour, every day. And that's, I think, where a channel with a really good strong base comes from. If you have to create that new content to keep it up each day, to keep your volume up with new content, that's where how many creators are we seeing with burnout?
Exactly, and I think what you're saying is true. I think Roberto Blake says this a lot, that evergreen and search-friendly content isn't the, quote, most sexy content, but it's stable and it's sustainable. Because if you get yourself on a trend, we can't control when the trend will keep on living and when it ends. I mean, fidget spinners came and went, and there were channels completely built on that. We had slime that came and went, and they were built on that. And we're seeing creators having issues pivoting. So when you focus on that evergreen, that thing, that thing, and I love that you said when you were going with your evergreen, you found your custom avatar through knowing what you wanted in the space. Mm-hmm. And a lot of creators say, I know what I want to do, but the thing is, YouTube doesn't necessarily work for what you want, it works for what the audience wants. It follows the audience. So when you figure out who you want to be speaking to in your audience, I think that's really what made the difference for you. Is that what you were pretty much saying?
Absolutely. And it's through that dialogue and that understanding that you realize the content that's going to best serve that community. And that's the content that you should be making.
I could not agree more. Steve, thank you so much for being on. I think we talked about something that not a lot of people are daring enough to even say, because so many people are like, you should focus on what's relevant, focus on the SEO, focus on trying to be suggested near big trends. But I think it's also good to realize that there's more than one type of content to create on YouTube. Steve, where can people find you?
Dotto Tech, everywhere, all platforms, Dotto Tech.
You own it, you have it. He's controlling the Grave Wave, folks. Check him out.
Unless you're a baby boomer that's looking for a podcast, then look for the Grey Wave, Grey.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks a lot.